Hi, DM Gallibond here. Welcome to Divine Thursday. This week we're going to take a look at the Cure Wounds spell. Every week on Divine Thursday we look at a different spell through the history of D&D that is for divine casters, your druids, your clerics, your paladins, those types of classes. And we look at not only how the spell works today in 5th edition, but go all the way back through the history of the game and the different variations of the game, different editions, and see how that spell has changed. Why is that important? Well, first of all, it's just kind of interesting to see that. But second of all, as a DM, if you are put in a situation where your character wants to try to use a spell or wants to try to do something, and there's kind of a gap in the 5th edition rules as written, there's not really a spell that does what they want to do, or if you're trying to design an encounter and put a monster in and there's not really a spell that does what you want this monster to do, if you know the history of the spells, you can maybe pick a spell and based on the history of how that spell has worked in the past, you can sort of find a justification for saying, oh, okay, yeah, maybe that will work. Maybe we could do this with this particular spell. And so that's one of the things that I'm trying to do here is, in addition to just going back and taking a historic look, is sort of giving DMs an idea of some of the things that they can do. So let's go ahead and let's get started with this. All right, we're going to start by looking at the 5th edition version of Cure Wounds. It's a first level spell. This is one of the venerable oldie but goodies. It's been around forever. You say a few words, you touch somebody, and they get hit points back. 5th edition, it's 1d8 plus your spellcasting modifier when you cast it at first level. If you use a higher level spell slot, so second or third level spell slot, you add 1d8 to the healing for every spell slot above first. Pretty simple. It takes one action, so it's one of those spells that basically takes your action to do for the round, and it's the school is evocation. So in 5th edition, it's considered an evocation spell. But let's go ahead and look back at the earliest days. This is the rules cyclopedia for original D&D. Original D&D came out in the early 70s. It was the version that Dave Arneson and Gary Gygax worked on and put together based on a game called Chainmail, which was based on a miniatures war game scene that was pretty popular in the late 60s and early 70s. And again, it was a touch spell, and this one would cure 1d6 plus 1 points of damage. Now there's two things to notice. One is this little asterisk here, which means it's a reversible spell. So you can, instead of cure light wounds, you can cause light wounds. And that would deal 1d6 plus 1 damage. In 5th edition, there's a separate spell called Inflict Wounds, which is the reverse of Cure Wounds. And the other thing that's interesting in this edition, and I think original D&D was the only edition that had this, it could either heal damage or remove paralysis. And you have to choose one or the other at the time you cast it. If you're going to cast it to remove paralysis, it doesn't heal any wounds. If you're going to use it to heal wounds, it will not cure paralysis. Because there was no cure paralysis spell, and I guess they figured, oh, well, that would be a good one just to substitute and let the caster decide at a time they're going to do it. That's what they want to do. All right, then let's look at AD&D, which is commonly referred to as first edition. Again, it's a level 1 spell, touch, and this will heal 1d8 points of damage. So very similar to 5th edition, but it doesn't have that caveat of adding your spellcasting modifier. Another thing that's an interesting change is it's necromantic. It's evocation magic in 5th edition, but it's necromancy magic in 1st edition. And then the casting time. It takes one action in 5th edition, so it takes your standard action to do that. And in uh, and in 1st edition, it takes 5 segments. Now every round in 1st edition is 10 seconds long, and there are 10 segments to a round, so a segment is 1 second. So this spell takes 5 seconds to cast. And that's one of the things when you look back through these old spells, you'll see that, some of them are 2 segments, some of them are 9 segments, some of them are a whole round, some of them are um, multiple rounds to cast the spell, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. And then again, cause late wounds is the reverse, and that will deal 1d8 damage instead of curing 1d8 damage. Then we'll take a look at 2nd edition. Okay, so 2nd edition, again, it's a necromancy spell. And just like with many spells, it's exactly the same between AD&D and 2nd edition. They did not change anything between those 2 editions. Spells worked exactly the same in many cases. Uh, then if we look at 3rd edition, we can now see a little bit more of the advancing of this spell towards its modern form. So now it's changed from being necromancy spell to a conjuration. Still not evocation, but take a look at the classes that get to cast it. Original D&D, 1st edition, 2nd edition, it's a cleric spell. 5th edition, it's bards, clerics, druids, paladins, rangers, artificers, and the life domain, and then the celestial. Okay, so I guess if you have a patron, like if you have a warlock patron that's a celestial, you get access to the cure wound spell as well. In 3rd edition 3.5, bards get it, clerics, druids, the healing domain, paladins, and rangers. And then notice too the level. So for every class except ranger, it's considered a 1st level spell slot. But for rangers, cure light wounds takes a 2nd level spell slot. Also notice it's no longer reversible because, and I think that's because the fact that they gave it to all these other classes, they said, okay, well, crap, we can't have reversible cleric spells anymore, so we have to create a separate spell that's going to inflict the wounds, and that's where they came up with the inflict wound spell. And then and you notice how their stat block for the spells get more elaborate in every in every edition. They keep having more items. And then there's this interesting thing here about the saving throw. Uh, so in 3rd edition, you channel positive energy that cures 1d8 points of damage plus 1 point per caster level up to a maximum of 5. So if you're a 1st level caster, it's 1d8 plus 1. If you're a 5th level caster or a 10th level caster, it's 1d8 plus 5. And then that caveat about positive energy is important because it says since undead are powered by negative energy, this spell will deal damage to them instead of curing their wounds. Um, and that's where the saving throw comes in. An undead creature can apply spell resistance and can attempt a will save to take half damage. So that's why you might be thinking, well, why would somebody want to make a saving throw against cure light wounds? Well, it's because if it's an undead, you're using it as an attack. And then the inflict wounds in this edition does negative energy, which will heal undead instead of causing harm to undead. And then let's take a look at 4th edition. And 4th edition is, of course, the oddball edition of D&D. When you look at most features, spells, abilities, the way you build characters and everything, there's sort of a continuum that starts from the original D&D, and then you can see an evolution through AD&D 2nd edition, 3rd edition, and 5th edition. But with 4th edition, they completely changed the paradigm of the way the game works. And just about the only thing that remains the same is that you roll dice for stuff. Uh, and so one of the ways you can see that here is that it uses, well, first of all, it's a daily spell, which means that you can only use it once per day. And then it's a utility at level 2. So your first level clerics uh, don't get this spell at all, and they have to be level 2 before they can get it. And then you have this mechanic called a healing surge. And what a healing surge is that represents a quarter of your total hit points. So if you have a character that has 20 hit points, you cast Cure Light Wounds on them, you're going to restore 5 hit points, because 5 is a quarter of 20. But if you have a character that has 80 hit points, and you use Cure Light Wounds on them, the same spell cast by the same cleric, it's going to restore 20 hit points instead of 5, because 20 is a quarter of the 80. And that's one of the differences. One of the big differences is that spells like this don't depend on the caster level for how effective they are. They depend on the recipient level for how effective they are. So your uh, this spell, as a lowly 2nd level utility spell, it remains viable until very, very late in the game. In fact, you could probably use that spell all the way up to level cap if you wanted to, because if you think about it, if you have a 25th level character with 200 hit points, you use Cure Light Wounds on them, well, you're going to restore 50 hit points with a 2nd level spell. Um, so that is going to restore a lot of damage with just a very small, a very lightweight healing spell. But again, the problem is it's daily, so you can only do that once a day. And then you have to rely on either the character's innate healing or potions or other types of things, because your cleric is only going to be able to do 1 Cure Light Wounds each day. All right, well, that is going to wrap it up for our look at Cure Light Wounds, and Cure Wounds, I should say. If you like what we're doing here on this channel, please hit the subscribe button down below, and ring the bell so that you will know when we post more videos here. You'll also see down in the description I have all the information about my Twitch channel, where I do live stream games 2 nights a week, and all of the other types of content that I do. Every day I do a different aspect of D&D, and you'll see that in the various playlists. And you'll also see archives on the YouTube channel of the actual play games that I run, going back to fall of last year is when I started recording those. And I've been slow to edit them, so what I'm starting to do now is I'm just starting to throw those up as unedited videos. So, you can slog through all the table talk and the time it takes me to set up for an encounter and stuff like that during the game. But eventually, when I get time, The idea is to go back and to edit those and take some of that stuff out and package them as slightly shorter individual episodes. But for now, at least if you just want to get a flavor of how the actual sessions run, you'll be able to do that as I begin to populate those playlists. All right. Thanks everybody for watching. And I hope you enjoyed this. Leave some comments down below if you would like. And we will see you back here again tomorrow where we will be doing Lore Friday. All right, everyone. Take care. Good night.